I was constantly aware of my position in the family hierarchy as a child dead last. My name is Ivy, and my older sister Olivia has always been the star of the house, while I was simply there. I can still clearly recall that day at the kitchen table when I was 7 years old, grinning proudly as I held up my flawless spelling test. I chirped, Mom, look, I got 100! As my tiny fists clutched the paper as if it were my lucky ticket. Mom was so focused on Olivia's college applications strewn all over the table that she hardly looked up. She muttered absently, "That's nice, honey," as she began to read another draft of Olivia's essay. "Now, Olivia, what if we rephrase this section about your volunteer work? It'll really make you stand out." By the time I was old enough to remember things, Olivia, who was 10 years older than me, was already gathering honors as children do playing cards. President of the student body, valedictorian, Yale full ride scholarship. Olivia completed everything. And Dad and Mom? They never failed to acknowledge any achievement. However, I had Grandpa Leo when they were busy supporting Olivia at award ceremonies and argument contests. He lived alone in the old house on Sycamore Street, where we used to spend hours sitting on the creaking wraparound porch. When no one was looking, he would sneak me chocolate chip cookies and tell me stories about his time as a shrewd businessman. He would slide a cookie toward me and say, "You know, kiddo, sometimes the quietest ones in the room end up making the biggest waves." He would then wink as if we were sharing a secret that the rest of the world couldn't comprehend. Every day after school, I would stroll to Grandpa's house while Dad buried himself in legal paperwork and Mom juggled her real estate ventures. He assisted me with my arithmetic assignments and taught me about investments and compound interest through equations. His eyes would sparkle with a sense of satisfaction that I never inherited from my parents. "Numbers never lie," he would say. The air at home was oppressive. Every discussion centered around Olivia's most recent victory. Mom would exclaim, "Did you hear? Olivia's already a junior partner at 28, 28, 28." Dad would say, "She's always been destined for great things," with a nod of approval. I would try to blend in with the wallpaper while sitting silently and pushing peas around my plate. Nevertheless, I put in a lot of effort at work. Perfect scores. Every possible business club. Grandpa was the only one who seemed to believe in the dream I was pursuing, so I threw myself into school. Then everything changed the summer before my senior year. Grandpa received a cancer diagnosis. It was also spreading quickly. I read his favorite business and economics books to him whenever I had free time. His mind was sharp even as his body grew weaker. One afternoon, with a chilly, delicate hand in mine, he rasped, "Ivy, promise me something." "Anything," I muttered, trying not to cry. "Go to college. Study business, like we always talked about. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. I promise," I stutteringly said, my throat constricted. I had already begun researching schools. The business program at Sycamore University was outstanding. He gave me a feeble smile with pride in his eyes when I told him. "That's my girl," he said to himself. "And remember, what do numbers never do? They never lie," I replied, forcing a little shaky smile. He vanished 2 weeks later. The funeral was a haze of hollow condolences and black clothes. Olivia made sure everyone understood how much she had given up to be there by flying in from New York. Mom worried more about Olivia's trip plans than she did about Grandpa's passing. Determining to keep my word, I immersed myself into my college applications. Then the letter arrived, the one who made all the difference. I felt like I could finally breathe when I saw the letter of acceptance from Sycamore University's business program. I was so excited that evening that I hurried into the kitchen, where Olivia and my parents were seated at the table. "Mom! Dad! I got in!" I exclaimed as I held the letter up, my heart thumping fiercely. Sycamore University accepted me. Quiet. Dad and Mom looked at each other, one of those sultry glances that usually portended trouble. Olivia was sitting next to them and didn't even look up from her phone. "Honey," Mom began in a fakely nice voice, "we need to talk about college." Dad avoided looking at me as he cleared his throat. "Your college fund? Well, it's gone," I blinked. "What?" Mom moved apprehensively. "We gave it to Olivia. For her wedding. You gave away my college fund? Grandpa's college fund?" I said tremblingly as I felt the floor wobble beneath me. Mom sighed and brushed me away, saying, "Don't be so dramatic. Olivia's marrying Ryan. Remember? The investment banker? They needed help with the wedding and a down payment on a house. You'll figure something out. You're good with numbers. Besides, you can be my maid of honor. Isn't that better than some dull business degree?" Olivia said, grinning as if she had just given me a consolation prize. With tears clouding my vision and my acceptance letter crumpled in my hands, I ran to my room. As though they hadn't just dashed my hopes, I could still hear them discussing wedding locations and centerpieces downstairs. I woke up that night with Grandpa's words still ringing in my head. Numbers are always accurate. Something was slipping my mind. Something significant. Then it dawned on me. Grandpa showed me his office 2 weeks prior to his death. The ancient oak desk. The keys. The drawer's fake bottom. With a knowing smile, he had said, "Just in case." I drove to Grandpa's house the following morning before school, holding on to the extra key he had given me. The home was eerily silent, as though it had been waiting for this opportunity. With my fingertips locating the concealed clasp, I headed to his office. There was only one envelope in the drawer, and it had my name. I was shaking as I clutched it, not realizing that Grandpa's last math lesson would be the turning point in my life. That night, I didn't leave my room. The house was full with the sounds of wedding conversation, clinking glasses, and laughter downstairs. Kate and my parents continued as like they hadn't just torn my future from me. I sat on my bed with my state university acceptance letter in my hands, the paper crinkling under my fingers as they curled so tightly. I felt like screaming, crying, and storming downstairs to demand that this be fixed. However, what would that accomplish? They had already decided what to do. My future wasn't as significant as Kate's wedding. A chilly insight descended upon me. To them, I was nothing. It was really an afterthought. Then I recalled. The office of Grandpa. I jolted to my feet, remembering that day 2 weeks before to his death. He had an antique oak desk. Before he gave me that sly smile, his weary fingers had moved down the edge of a drawer. Just in case, he had informed me. At the moment, I had no idea what he meant, but now I had to find out. I didn't even hold off till dawn. After grabbing my car keys, I headed directly to his residence. When I used the extra key he had given me years ago to unlock the door, the place was silent and dark, and I felt the weight of his absence weighing down on me. Dust and fading memories filled the air. With my heart pounding, I walked through the well-known hallways until I arrived at his office. He left the desk just how it was. I opened the drawer. It appeared to be vacant at first. Only business cards and outdated pencils. However, a concealed panel at the bottom came into contact with my fingers. There was a gentle click when I pressed it. As I raised the fake bottom, my breath seized in my throat. One envelope with my name written in Grandpa's orderly, methodical handwriting was inside. With trembling hands, I ripped it open. "Emma, you must have retained our lessons if you are reading this. Numbers are always accurate. My faith in you didn't either. I've seen your parents elevate Kate and ignore your goals for years. That's over now. They don't know my lawyer is the only one who knows that I've created something truly unique. It is much larger than this residence. Emma, I've set up a trust fund, one that surpasses your previous college fund in size. I'm leaving you all I own. Arthur Bennett, my lawyer, has the specifics. This letter has his card attached. He will describe everything. The short story, however, is that you now control Maple Street Investment Group and all of its assets. A tiny percentage of my liquid assets will go to your parents, as they anticipate. Unless you choose to tell them, they will never be aware of the business or its portfolio. I've made sure of it. Make good use of it. Obtain your degree. Create the future you are entitled to. Don't forget that numbers are always accurate. Grandpa Joe, all of my love, P.S. Your birth date is the combination to my wall safe. There is another item I left for you inside. It took me 3 readings of the letter to fully comprehend it. I almost dropped it because my hands were shaking so severely. I hurried over to the safe behind Grandpa's favorite New York Stock Exchange painting. I fumbled with my fingers, turning the dial. The lock opened with a click. I discovered another envelope, this one filled with papers, actions, bank records, ledgers for the company. I flipped through them while sitting on the floor, gasping for air. The Maple Street Investment Group was no ordinary company. It was a multi-million-dollar company with interests and properties in 3 different states. And based on these documents, I was the owner of everything. My spine tingled at the realization. I believed that I had no power all this time. Grandpa, however, had been preparing for this. He was aware. My eyes began to brim up with tears, but they weren't tears of despair. I wasn't helpless. I could afford to protect my own future. I refused to let them take that away from me. The following morning, I called. When I called my name, Arthur Bennett's secretary got me through right away. He said, "Ah, Miss Emma," with warmth. "I was anticipating your arrival. Your granddad had good things to say about you. Is it possible for us to meet this afternoon?" The truth was beginning to set in by the time I entered Mr. Bennett's office later that day. He said, "The trust fund is worth about $47 million, including all investments." My breath almost caught in my throat. "Your grandfather organized everything to give you total authority. Your parents only viewed a portion of the will. The remainder was given to you just prior to his death." As I left his office, I experienced an emotion I had never experienced before. Strength. Not in a mean manner. I didn't feel the need for retribution. For the first time, I had complete control over my own life. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom while I was driving home. "Mom, remember that tonight is Kate's wedding planning dinner. Your maid of honor responsibilities must be finalized." I gazed at the display. Then I grinned. Tonight we talked about a lot of things. My family was already discussing cake selections and floral arrangements when I entered the dining room that evening. Mom said, at last, without raising her gaze, "We've been holding out. Kate must choose the gowns for her bridesmaids." I put my suitcase down and remarked, "Actually, I have something more important to discuss." Dad, already irritated, sighed. "We've been through this before, Emma. The funds were used for Kate's wedding. It is in the best interests of the family." I cocked my head. What's best for the family? I then spread my acceptance letter from State University and the trust documents over the table. Like it was best for the family to steal my future? Dad's face grew serious. "What is this about?" I gave the papers a tap. Investment Group Maple Street. Grandpa's business. Millions of dollars are worth it. He let me handle it. Mother's face turned ghostly white. Kate clattered her fork onto her plate. Her fiancé, James, an investment banker, appeared uneasy as well. Flipping through the papers, Dad stumbled. This can't be right." "Oh, that's correct," I responded coolly. "I learned a lot from Grandpa. And now, I will attend college on my own terms. You can no longer be your afterthought." Kate's voice was brimming with fake sweetness as she attempted a grin. "You'll still assist with the wedding, Emma?" "We are, after all, family," I chuckled. "Relatives?" I repeated. "You mean my college fund was stolen by their family?" "Kate, find someone else to pay for your ideal wedding. James might be able to get by on his investment banker salary." Dad got up and spoke sharply. "Don't act hastily, Emma." I gave him a direct look. "Rash? Like forfeiting my future in order to finance Kate's second home?" "Quiet." After gathering my paperwork, I turned to go. "Oh, and Kate?" I spoke behind my back. "Your wedding plans might need to be scaled back." She blinked. "What?" "Why?" I grinned. "It seems to me that your budget recently suffered greatly." As I left, I could hear their protests echoing behind me. However, I didn't turn around. I had had enough of being invisible in my life, and for the first time, I was the one with the pen in my hand, writing my own tale. I didn't return home that evening. Rather, I drove directly to Grandpa's house, which is now my home. Grandpa used to sit here in his rocking chair and watch the world go by, and every time I stepped up, the wraparound porch creaked under my weight. The weight of the last 24 hours weighed heavily on me as I stood there for a long time, breathing in the cool night air. I had completed the task. I was victorious. Not in a way that made me feel victorious or vindictive, but rather in a way that allowed me to finally take charge of my own life. Nevertheless, I was aware that my family would not tolerate this. I wasn't a moron. I was going to be taken by them. They had nothing now, and I had everything. My mind was already racing with all I had to do when I got up early the following morning. First things first, I needed to make sure everything was secure. I was back in Mr. Bennett's office before midday, But this time I had a specific objective in mind. I must ensure that they cannot contest the will, I stated in a firm voice. Mr. Bennett smiled at me approvingly. Emma, your grandfather was quite thorough. The trust is unbreakable. While he was still living, it was organized and moved. Your parents cannot legally claim ownership of the business, the assets, or the investments. You own everything. My chest somewhat relaxed as I let out a breath. I whispered, They're still going to try. They won't simply leave this situation. His face grew serious. No, they won't. However, it is the reason we are taking measures. I had complete authority over Maple Street Investment Group by the time I left his office, and I was well protected by the law. I had ensured that they were unable to touch a single cent. The calls did indeed begin that evening. Mom, we have to discuss this inheritance issue, darling. There has been a miscommunication. Dad, this is absurd, Emma. We are related. Let's be sensible. Kate, you really intend to harm us in this way? Is everything really being kept for yourself? I paid them all no attention. Then Mom arrived at my residence 3 days later. She was seated at the table with her hands clasped around a mug, as if it were the only thing holding her together as I entered the kitchen. Her voice was shaking as she said, We need to talk. Keeping my distance, I leaned against the counter and picked up a coffee. How were you able to enter? She cast an embarrassed gaze down. Your grandfather's spare key was still with me. I arched an eyebrow. No longer. She let out a short breath and then raised her head to give me a well-crafted look of worry. Your dad isn't feeling well. His health is being impacted by the shock and stress of everything. What is his blood pressure? With a strong voice, I interrupted her. After everything you've done, are you really going to play the guilt card? She lost her cool. We followed our instincts. She stood up suddenly and snapped. Kate's wedding and her home are significant family events, and I wasn't educated? I fired back. You didn't care about my future? She paused. Obviously it was important, but Kate needed, I said sourly in closing. Kate was always in need. And Kate always won. Her expression stiffened. Your grandfather would be embarrassed by your self-centered behavior. While your sister must reduce the scope of her wedding plans, you keep all this money to yourself. The truth is, I laughed. Oh, really? I carried Grandpa's letter back to the office after walking there. I pushed it into her grasp. Go through it. Read about his years of observing your preference for Kate. Read about how he ensured that I was given the opportunity to pursue my own goals. As she read, her hands shook. Her face drained of color with each line. Tears filled her eyes as she raised her head. We never meant, said Emma. I firmly yet discreetly said, Get out. Her breath caught. Your family still includes us. I pointed to the door. Family members don't take from one another. Dreams are not dismissed by family. For decades, families don't play favorites and then complain when the roles are reversed. Her eyes flickered with what appeared to be regret as she hesitated. She then placed the key on the table. She then departed. My phone buzzed with a message from James that night. James, may we get together? Only us. Something is important for you to know. I agreed against my better judgment. James seemed odd when we first met in a coffee shop in the heart of the city, uncomfortable. A stack of papers was slid across the table by him. Kate has been lying, he added quietly, about the wedding, the house, everything. I scowled as I flipped through the papers. Bank records, accounts for savings. What is this? He let out a breath. We had plenty of money stored up. Your college funds were not necessary. I went cold. Then, why? He paused, then let out a sigh. Because Kate was against you attending college. She feared you would overshadow her. I felt a burst of frigid, bitter wrath. I tightened my jaw. Why are you stating this to me? After a moment of hesitation, James wiped his face. Because I can't marry that kind of person. I blinked, he said. I canceled the wedding this morning. The consequences were immediate. Dad, Kate's life is being ruined by you. Take care of this. How could you be so cold-hearted, Mom? Kate, too? That evening, Kate arrived to my house. Slamming the door, her face was plastered with mascara and gushing tears. All of this is your fault, she cried out over the intercom. You are the reason James left me. Despite her rage, I remained composed as I observed her on the security camera. I said into the speaker. No, Kate. James left because he discovered your true identity. Anger twisted her face. With your large home and your foolish company, you think you're so smart now? You are absolutely nothing. You will never be anything. It was just the younger sister who required Grandpa to purchase her success. I gave in to her tirade. Permit her to scream. When she eventually lost her temper, I punched the intercom button once again while maintaining a calm tone of voice. Kate, what's the difference between us? I said. You reached your zenith in high school. But me? I am only just beginning. Her look of disbelief was captured on video. She realized for the first time she was no longer the main character in this tale. I kept thinking about Grandpa's remarks as she hurried back to her car. Numbers are always accurate. And now, for the first time, I had the numbers on my side. After that, I didn't hear from Kate for some time. I didn't anticipate doing so. When she wasn't in charge of the issue, she had always been the kind to vanish. But what about Mom and Dad? They had not finished. I was going over quarterly reports when I got a call from Maria, my secretary at Maple Street Investment Group, 3 days after Kate had a breakdown on my porch. Maria, your father is in the office, Miss Emma. I scowled. For what purpose? She paused. He's insistent on talking to you about family investment opportunities. I almost burst out laughing. Naturally, Dad wasn't here to see how I was doing. He was searching for money. I let out a sigh. Tell him that I spend the entire day in meetings. What about Maria? Yes? Notify security that none of my family members have permission to view any company data. She hesitated. Understood, Miss Emma, she added, with a type of subdued acceptance I never received from my real parents. Suddenly, I blocked Dad's access to Maple Street. He wasn't the kind to give up lightly, though. He sent me email after email over the course of the following few weeks, filled with ambitious development initiatives and detailed business offers encapsulated in pretentious rhetoric like restoring family unity through shared ventures. I paid them all no attention. Then one day, Kate sent me an email. Subject, let's make this right. To Emma, although I am aware that we have had disagreements, I have been reflecting. I've signed up for business school. I want to know what you learned about Maple Street from Grandpa. Perhaps we could collaborate. I could learn the ropes and start at the basic level. I am aware that I made a mistake with the college fund. I felt insecure and envious. However, we are sisters. Doesn't that make a difference? Kate, love. My chest tightened as I gazed at the email. A tiny part of me wanted to believe her for a moment. However, I suddenly recalled what my grandfather had said to me. Kid, making money isn't the hardest part of running a business. It's figuring out who to put your trust in. I responded with a single line of typing. Me, forward your letter of acceptance to the business school. Kate never answered. Rather, I received a call from my attorney, Mr. Bennett, 3 days later. He sounded distressed as he said, Your sister just tried to set up a meeting with me. She wanted to talk about reorganizing the leadership of the organization, asserted that you decided to appoint her as co-CEO. My chest became filled with a sluggish, icy fury. No letter of acceptance was present. No real effort. This was merely another attempt at dominance. All right. I would demonstrate to her the type of opponent she would be facing, if that was her preferred strategy. I convened an emergency board meeting that afternoon. I had the power to immediately enact policy changes because I was the majority shareholder, I declared. With immediate effect, no member of the immediate family may be hired without unanimous board approval. Additionally, every qualification needs to be confirmed. Without hesitation, the policy was approved. Officially, Kate was unable to access Maple Street Investment Group. My phone exploded up that night. Kate, you have no right to keep me out of my own family's business. Dad, Emma, you're acting irrationally. Let's have a conversation. Mom, you're doing something wrong. As a family, we must talk about this. I paid them all no attention. My home security system then notified me of movement on my porch at 9 o'clock at night. My stomach nodded when I drew up the camera stream. Mom, Dad, Kate, standing in front of my door. Their faces were pinched and pallid, with a mixture of despair and frustration on their cheeks. I hit the button for the intercom. Open up, Emma, Dad yelled. We must discuss the business. I cocked my head to observe them via the screen. There is nothing to discuss. Your family is us. Mom sobbed, her eyes full of sorrow. You owe us. I let out a nasty, chilly laugh. I have no debt to you. Kate's face contorted in rage as she pushed forward. You unappreciative little, her father touched her arm. Let's be reasonable, princess, he continued, his voice taking on the tone of a lawyer. Cooperation could be advantageous to all of us. The experience your sister possesses is invaluable, I interrupted him. In what? I asked calmly. Taking something that isn't hers? Influencing others to achieve her goals? Thank you, but no. Quiet. Kate's face then contorted. A hideous scowl formed in her mouth. She spat out, This isn't over. You can't continue to hide behind Grandpa's wealth. I arched an eyebrow. Do you believe I'm hiding? I asked in a composed tone. No, Kate. I'm doing well. I watched as she came to her senses. She comprehended for the first time. She was defeated. Totally. I called Mr. Bennett as they started to walk away. I want to know if they have any chance of interfering with the business. He reassured me that he was already working on it and that our legal team was creating a thorough protection strategy. However, Emma, you should be aware of something else. I scowled. What is it? He paused. There is one additional clause in the trust that your grandfather left. It won't become active until your subsequent birthday. I felt sick to my stomach. What sort of clause? He cautiously said. I'm not at liberty to say just yet, but it's important. I can assure you of that. I let out a breath, naturally. Grandpa had everything prepared. And suddenly I understood this was not the end of it. The actual conflict had not yet begun. For the next few months, I waited, awaiting my birthday, waiting for whatever Grandpa had started to come to light. Meanwhile, the first prospered. I spent my days at Maple Street Investment Group, moved into Grandpa's house full-time, and got ready for my first semester at State University. My family, meanwhile, fell apart. Dad's and Mom's texts slowed. Kate became really quiet. She had returned to live with them when I last heard from her. I ought to have felt guilty. I didn't. Because I was the protagonist of my own story for the first time in my life. At last, my 25th birthday came around. Mr. Bennett called me when I woke up. Your grandfather left you a video, Emma. It was just supposed to be displayed today. I felt sick to my stomach. Grandpa's face came to life when I sat in his office an hour later, gazing at a screen. He appeared worn out, older than I thought. However, his playful gleam remained. Little one, happy birthday. My breath caught. You have gained knowledge about the company if you are viewing this. The faith. I knew you could manage the tasks you have taken on. Then his grin dimmed. But you have one more thing to learn. He raised a heavy folder. Your parents believe they have complete knowledge of their inheritance. They are unaware that there were restrictions attached to their share. My pulse was pounding as I leaned forward. Up until now, the inheritance has been kept in trust. It is theirs if they have demonstrated that they are responsible, helpful, and thoughtful. There are no conditions. My breath caught. However, if they have demonstrated that they are manipulative and self-centered, his face grew serious. All right, numbers are always honest. The screen turned dark. With my hands balled into fists, I gazed up at Mr. Bennett. He let out a breath. Their inheritance has been forfeited based on the past year. I blinked. What? Their resources. Their characteristics. You now own everything that was connected to their share of the trust. Quiet. My ears ringing. Winning wasn't the only goal here. They were about to lose everything. It buzzed on my phone. Mom texted. Mom, have a wonderful birthday. To celebrate, we're having a family supper this evening. It's time to move on from all of this ugliness. I almost burst out laughing. They were unaware. Still. However, they would. By tonight, Dad had left me 3 missed calls by the time I arrived home. Kate's as well. None of them were answered by me. Rather, I spent the evening going over Grandpa's papers, each well-planned precaution and backup plan inscribed in his exact handwriting. He was ready for anything. The doorbell rang. I accessed the stream from the security camera. Mom, Dad, Kate. They had pallid faces. Crazy. I hit the button for the intercom. Please, Emma. Mom sobbed, tears running down her cheeks. Everything is lost. A heavy hush for a long time. Then I spoke something at last. Like my college funds were gone? I spoke in a chilly tone. Like I lost notice and support for years? As if your decisions caused me to lose a typical family relationship? Dad's voice trailed off. This can be fixed. I gave a headshake. It's too late. Kate's eyes were wild as she pushed forward. You entitled, pampered brat. Do you really believe you can simply take everything away from us? I chuckled. I cocked my head and said, No, Kate. This is what you did to yourselves. Now I could see it taking hold. Years of partiality, the deception, the right. At last, it had caught up with them. You've got 30 days to leave the house. Mom made a little, choked sound. You, Dad began, his lawyer's voice taking over. We're going to fight this. I grinned. All okay. Grandpa was also ready for that, quiet. Despite the angry expression on Kate's face, there was something else there. Fear. She had nothing to rely on for the first time. As reality set in, I saw them stagger back to their vehicle. When did they leave by car? I didn't feel guilty. I felt no remorse. I was liberated. After 3 months, everything was different. The family home was sold. Mom and Dad moved across town to a tiny apartment. Kate? She was hired at last. Preston Financial's entry-level administrative assistant. Minimum pay. No ties to family. I got a call from Maria one afternoon. Your sister is here to visit you, Miss Emma. I paused. Then? Take her in. Kate arrived looking a little different. The high-end clothing was no more. Gone are the immaculate nails and the flawless polish. She appeared genuine for the first time. She took a seat on the other side of me. Without feigning or making any excuses, she declared, I got a job. I've never gotten one on my own before. I remained silent. Simply wait. With a feeble giggle, she acknowledged, It's minimum wage. It turns out that I don't have as many skills as I believed. A pause. Then she let out a breath and took a battered envelope out of her bag. She trembled as she added, I discovered my old diaries while we were moving. I spent countless pages planning how to keep you down. How to ensure that you don't ever eclipse me? She took a deep breath. I was terrible. I looked at her face. Her words were free of manipulation for the first time. No plan. Just the facts. She said, I was the one who suggested taking your college fund. It was me who always made sure my parents paid attention to me. I became someone I don't even recognize because I was so terrified that you would surpass me. A pause. I'm not here to beg for forgiveness, money, or a job. She gave me a direct glance. I simply had to let you know that you won, not only the cash or the business. While I was preoccupied attempting to prevent you from being anything at all, you became someone. She turned to go. I halted her. Kate. She looked back. I looked into her eyes and said, Grandpa used to say something about waves and quiet people. But he said something else too, her eyebrows raised. You earn second chances. Not provided. She understood and nodded. Well, I suppose I should start by making my own way. I gave a nod. I think that's a good place to start. She forced a tiny smile. Then she turned to leave. I sat on Grandpa's wraparound porch that evening, my home. Just like when I was a child sitting here with Grandpa, the stars seemed to extend indefinitely above us. I kept thinking about what he had said. The quietest people in the room can sometimes cause the most commotion. And now? The wave was me. I wasn't finished yet.